one and all, as we celebrate the magic of women in cinema at our Film Coven. We're your hosts, Kelli Mehan
and Melissa Woody. And today we are inducting CELINE SCIAMMA into our cinema circle.
It's also really, really, I think, good for cinema because it's bringing, new emotions. Good for you. It's good for us. You know, it's not the same old.
Tell the people how we got here today. Like, what's our theme for the month and why we chose CELINE?
For the month of March here at Film Coven, we've been celebrating, Women's History Month, women in general. Kind of like the theme of our show in general is celebrating the power of women in film. And one of the best directors working today is CELINE SCIAMMA. And I just think her voice specifically with women, that's definitely a theme through a lot of her films, felt like she was the right choice for today, for this month, to celebrate one of the best female directors.
Absolutely. When you said to me CELINE SCIAMMA, I'm like did not have the name yet. And then you're like, oh, she's this French director. She did a Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And I'm like, yes, that one. That's the one we need to do for the month of March, as you sort of said, to celebrate women. Because as you said, she's just got a real tender way of telling female-centric stories. So I'm really excited to get into the topic today.
Me too. And I'm curious, was that the way you got introduced to her, Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
Absolutely. So I didn't catch it when all the buzz was going around 2019. Anything 2018 onwards, I've really not watched in real time very often. It's things I've had to come back around, or just haven't been in the cinemas as much, or watching things as the buzz is happening. So I have heard about it for a while, and I had it on my end of year watch, because usually that's what happens is I get my summer holidays and I have my movie marathons. And this was the second to last one. So I do need to shout out Mike Henry, because he curates my film festival every year, and he knew to close out on something so amazing. And I just remember it was a Sunday afternoon, had the house to myself, got myself situated. It's a good Sunday afternoon movie. I don't know if everyone gets what I'm saying by that, but it just is when you just want something, when you just want something cozy, something to curl up with, that sort of thing. And I remember watching it and straight away from the get being really immersed in the world and just enjoying myself. So I remember my experience of watching it as well as the film itself. Melissa, when did you first see it?
Yeah, I also was a little late to it as well. So I did not watch it in 2019. I think I got to it in 2021 because I just couldn't stop hearing about it. Everyone I talked to, have you seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? And I was like, no, I haven't. So I finally was like, okay, I need to watch this movie. And I was completely blown away. I'm a huge, huge fan of this movie specifically, and that's what really started my love with CELINE SCIAMMA. I was just like, I need to know more about this lady, and I need to see more of her work. So we're going to go through two of her movies today, Portrait of a Lady on Fire and Petite Maman. And I figured let's start with the one that we both got introduced to, which was Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Quand vous êtes embarrassé, vous mordez vos lèvres. Vraiment. Quand vous êtes troublé, vous respirez par la bouche. Combien de temps restez-vous? Je ne sais pas. J'ai un nouveau sentiment. Du regret. Quel en est le titre? Portrait de la jeune fille en feu.
This film is set during the 18th century, I believe, and it's about a woman who's commissioned to paint a portrait of this other woman because she is going to be set off to be married. And that's kind of very high level plot, and they form a relationship through that process.
Marianne in particular, I think, makes a statement from the filmmaker and what it's trying to do for not not the opening where she's speaking in flashback, because we've talked about it before. I love that trope. Anything where you are really bookending it with someone telling a story or someone telling a flashback works really well for me. Give me very Mona Lisa smile in the art class for some reason I'm watching it. No, I mean when she is on the boat. When she's on the boat, the boat's rocking and her supplies fall overboard and she looks at the men and it's like, is someone going to help? Like, no. And it's very like, I'm just going to do it myself. And she jumps in the water and rescues her supplies and makes it the way back to shore. And what a way to introduce a strong female character. This is a woman who has resolve. This is a woman who's, if something isn't being done, is going to go out and do it, risk sickness, because we know in the 1700s, like if you are caught cold, it could be deadly, absolutely, like coming out of the sea, out of the water. The sea is rough as well. So risk that she takes to go do it is amazing. But not only that, it's someone who really shows passion for their vocation in life, that she loves art and she has a task and this is what she wants to do. So I thought that was really such a great way of, we are immediately on her side. It is just a great way to let the audience in and being like, I like her. How did you find it?
Yeah, so this story is kind of told in like book ending kind of way in two periods of time. It's one in the present, her teaching an art class, reminiscing on this love story of hers. And then the majority of the film is the love story itself kind of unfolding. And yeah, I love this opening. I think it's really, really well filmed as well. Just like the rockiness of the boat. Like you feel like you're on the boat. It's because I feel like this film like throughout is about the female gaze. We're very much in Marianne's gaze of like being on the boat and just like the rockiness of it all. And yeah, I thought very well executed, just like the way it's filmed. And then yeah, I'm just like, girl, you're wearing that big old dress and like it just seems like, man, she must have been so cold getting back into that boat.
Absolutely. And like I said, that was definitely deadly at the time when you would just like be shivering on shore. So I love her commitment straight away. It is shown there. So it's great. And then I think she doesn't meet Heloise for a while.
So she kind of lands on the island because it's all very like secluded to where they're at. You know, it seems like it's like the only house in like, or mansion or whatever you want to call this place. It feels like there's no one around besides these people on this island. And yeah, she meets I think the Countess is what she goes by, but yeah, the mom. It's a very interesting dynamic because she shows her like her painting of like who she got married off to, which I thought was interesting. I mean, this is just something that is a social norm of like, you're going to paint a portrait and send it to your future husband. It feels like very way back in the day, a dating app kind of thing, like sending a photo.
Like old school Tinder. It's very, I'm obsessed with Six the Musical, so it gives me very, when he saw my portrait, he was like, yeah.
When he saw my portrait, he was like, yeah.
Like, you know, the musical theatre fans are going to be like, Kelly, that reference is bang on. Thank you. But this is what we had to do at the time, and very of the rich. So I think that her betrothed is a gentleman from Milan, or is like has status, has power. So they wanted to make sure that if you were doing cross-country intermingling, that they were of good stock, of good breeding and pretty. And we see that the Countess was very glamorous as well and very young. And I think that plays into it a fair factor because that would be the matriarchal role at the time, is to prepare the daughters to be wed. And it's very interesting that we find out that Heloise is the second daughter. So that is the big part, all plays into it, of family hierarchies and things like that, because it wasn't intentionally meant to be Heloise who was married off to this Italian gentleman. It was meant to be the older sister. So I found all that really interesting in the time period as well.
We kind of find out a little bit more about Eloise, that like she was at a convent becoming a sister. We find out that her sister tragically died, and it is implied that she killed herself. So it's like a very sad opening to that yeah, it's like she wasn't this first choice in this arranged marriage, and now she has to kind of come out of what she was maybe wanting to do. It's hard to say. I think a lot of this time period is very much oppression with women, so it's hard to say if she really had a choice in becoming a sister or not. But now she's back at the island and set to get married, and so it's like we learned all this information. We still haven't even seen her yet.
I love that. I love that so much, that they really hold off in introducing us to the Lady on Fire. And even when we get to meet her, she is fiery of spirit. That's what I like. It's just like, so she doesn't want her portrait painted. So it's the task of Marianne to be her secret friend, like to infiltrate and to stare at her and to get this, just get it done. Like your mission if you choose to accept it.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
Vous allez devoir la peindre sans que les sache.
Paint this portrait of my daughter without her really knowing. Be her friend, be her companion. Go out. I love my Jane Austen books. A walking companion slays me. Like, yes. That is what ladies do. Ladies go out for a walk. And this French beachside as well is just beautiful.
Gorgeous.
So scenic. So even when we're introduced to Eloise, she's like, I'm going for a walk. And all you're seeing straight away is the back of her head and this cloak. And I think that's so cool, like just to hold off because it builds our anticipation of the audience. It's like, what does she look like? Show us your face. I'd like to take it off, please. Like, bury that.
So I feel like, this like tension is building of like, who is this woman? Especially because kind of going back to the beginning really quick, she literally says like, tell me about that photo. And it's like, it's the portrait of Lady on Fire, it's like the titular name in it. So it's like, we kind of know that she's probably going to end up being this titular Lady on Fire. And like she just runs towards that cliff. And because we have the information of how her sister passed was jumping off the cliff, you feel so nervous. Like you're like, oh my gosh, like is she gonna do the same thing? Like it's just very much like anxiety inducing, and then she kind of like stops right at the edge, and it's just like and then she turns around, and that's the first time we get to see her, and I think it's a very powerful shot there.
She stares at Marianne, but she's staring at the audience as well. There's a lot of looks, and there's a lot of longing, and there's a lot of prolonged eye contact, and it's just such a great choice from the director to do so, because when you say that, it sounds boring. But when you watch it, it's so gripping. Like, it's just something about, so whether it's the actresses as well as the choice of shots or something, but when she's staring at the camera, it's bringing you, the audience, into the movie as well. It's putting you straight in Marianne's shoes, and that just draws you into this mystery of who is this woman, and just her eyes are just piercing. It's just great.
I love the quote here as well, because she's like, I've dreamt of this for years, and then she's like dying, and she's like running. And I think that's a theme throughout of like, Eloise is really trying to find freedom and autonomy, and she doesn't have it because of her circumstance. And I do love these two characters where Mary Ann is very much maybe quote unquote the like lesser in regards to like the hierarchy of like the social ladder.
She works. That's already like puts her in that position.
But she has more freedom than that like aristocratic lady. So I find that really interesting, kind of that dynamic between the two girls.
It's definitely like a Prince and the Pauper type deal, where it's like your differences of circumstances. There's always something to envy with someone else, and you might think that these people have it all, but they really probably don't have what they want the most.
So she's been tasked to paint her in secret. They're becoming friends kind of through this process because she is. At this point in time, Marianne is very much just focused on the task at hand, that she needs to paint this portrait. So she is really like focusing on her details, the ear, the hair, all of those things. And then we get to see kind of these shots of her like secretly doing it at night. And it's just, there's kind of a little bit of comedy to it, I feel, just because that sounds very difficult. It's like by candlelight, and she's like trying to like make this work. And one of the scenes that really stands out to me kind of as this romance eventually, but I would say a friendship, at least initially, is blossoming. Marianne plays the Four Seasons on the harpsichord, because we find out from Eloise that like she's never heard an orchestra. She's never heard of any other music besides from church.
Ça raconte l'histoire d'un orage qui monte.
This scene, like any time two characters are sitting down at an instrument, specifically a piano, I think it works very, very well. It's very tender and sweet. I was having to think about it today, that I find that really a little bit strange, because I would think at the time, as I was sort of saying, ladies were bred to be accomplished. So you either sang well, or you performed on the piano, or you did artwork or needlepoint. Like you had something to fill your day. So when I was thinking about it today, I'm like, that's a little bit odd that Heloise isn't the one to introduce Marianne, but then Marianne has a very artistic spirit and soul, so it does end up playing well in the longer story. But I was just like, oh, usually that's what you would get, especially from a second daughter. I would think you would need to push that up, but then again, I guess if you go into the convent, like that was meant to be your life, like so she's sort of a little bit pushed to the side.
It very much foreshadows the ending here. I think also too, just the motif of music is definitely used throughout, more in concept, that because like we don't really get that much music from the movie. I think with love you can't always really express those feelings. It's very hard to kind of put into words. So I think music is very much a way to express that. I think this kind of song, foreshadowing to the end, is just it's very beautiful. But even it's just kind of sweet to her kind of showing her music on the harpsichord, and it's cool to kind of see this old school instrument that's not really used anymore.
Yeah, and the choice of the four seasons of the Vivaldi piece in particular is extremely clever and very thematic, so I thought that was really well done.
So she's been painting her in secret. At this point, tells her the truth of like kind of what's going on, is like, hey, like I'm here to paint you, like I'm actually like not really your friend, but like I've become your friend, so I'm telling you this. She gets so upset, she burns the painting.
It's such a movie trope. And it never turns out well, but the way it's handled is quite ballsy and like quite fiery, and it's sort of like literally because she's putting on a fire, but like I respect the steadfastness of Heloise of like, that's not on, and like I guess that is how you would respond if it's, you've been tasked to do this thing in secret and you let your guard down for people, and especially if there is a friendship or even an attraction blossoming, that would be a bit of a dagger to the heart already, that like if there's ulterior motives, or you would always think that your interactions were somewhat tainted at that point.
Eloise is upset by this version because she's like, that's not what I look like. I find it very kind of fun, like this dynamic between them, the pushing back. And at this point too, Eloise is agreeing, like, I will let you paint me. Like, I'm going to sit still. I'm going to put on the dress so you don't have to do it in secret anymore. And this is also kind of when the Countess and Mom kind of goes away, the whole island's to themselves. And I very much get this like sleepover vibe for the next few days. It's just like all the girls.
I think this is one of the sort of turning points in the movie and the relationship. I think you're right that once the Countess leaves and once we can start doing the actual painting, a levity gets brought into it a little bit more, and you can enjoy the characters. And you can see some walls coming down for sure, and them both looking at each other and sussing each other out, and that friendship attraction starting to grow. And it's really nice to see. I think it's about nearly midway-ish, I think, through the movie. Yeah. So we've had a lot of build-up and a lot of tension for now. So to release that is really a good choice.
One of the moments that we actually do get music in the film, it's diegetic. We cut to this bonfire scene.
So I've only seen this movie the once, but there's two major scenes that stick out to me, and for sure it's this one and the ending. This one, as I sort of said, on my lazy Sunday afternoon when you're sitting there and these women start making this choral music that's just coming straight from the chest and from the heart. It really comes through the screen. And if you've got good subwoofers, like that bass comes through as well, and it sort of starts hitting through to you. What a really powerful moment, because usually I think when we think of women singing, we think of like soprano voices, we think of really high pitch. So to do it on a more lower level, and as I sort of said, in a communal setting, I thought was really powerful. And like our show's Film Coven, and it was definitely giving off those sorts of like a gathering of women rejoicing. Were you going to make the same point? I'm so sorry. A gathering of women coming together for their voices. What did you think, Mel?
No, absolutely no. It definitely gave me that coven feeling, because I feel like kind of what you see in like paintings or photos of like a coven is like it's that bonfire with them like dancing around, sometimes naked, but like that's kind of the image I have with like a coven or like witches coming together. I think the scene is great, and I love the song. I find it very powerful. I think it's maybe some commentary of like when women work together, they make magic, they make music, kind of thing. At least that's kind of how I interpret it. And then also, this is the scene where like the titular like lady is on fire, and I really find that scene really powerful, because I feel like that's the moment where Eloise is like being vulnerable and letting Marianne all the way in. I feel is like, hey, like this is how I want you to view me. This is how I want you to paint me. This is how I want you to see me, kind of thing. At least that's how I kind of interpret it. And also just like, I think the vulnerability of like falling in love and like having your heart on fire, that kind of thing. I don't know.
And there's just something about like the nighttime, like it just breeds those types of feelings and sensations. Like everything's definitely heightened. Gives me very like growing up and being a teenager and going to parties in someone's backyard, like very that.
Yeah.
I'm falling in love for the first time and feeling that infatuation. And yeah, I thought this theme's a really strong part of the movie.
Kind of this new version of the painting. There's a lot of back and forth between the two of them, and I really like how I feel like the artist in the art, Eloise being like the person being painted and Marianne being the painter, like they're starting to blend more, where they're becoming more equals, I feel, because at this point Eloise is letting Marianne know, like, I see you and I'm looking at you. Like she's not obviously doing like physically painting her, but like she's trying to tell her that like, I see you. You're my object in a way. And I really love that dynamic and kind of them blending and becoming more equals at this point.
I like that statement, and what's just so well done throughout the film is that the plot line is understated yet bold at the same time. And by what I mean is that it's not sticking to those traditional story types where it's like you would look at each other and the violins swell and here we go, and then we get some inner monologue, or my most hated thing when people talk aloud to themselves and there's no one else in the room. It's like, that's not happening. But just the choice of language and short, sharp sentences like that, I think play fantastic. So being bold in choice of words, but understated in the delivery and just not blowing it too much out of proportion, I think gives it that tender touch and that realistic touch as well. So I really like how the movie is progressing at this time. And that's what I'm saying, it keeps you gripped and into it without being boring, which it's just such a tightrope, because like this on paper sounds really dull. But it's the interplay between the two of them that really keeps you connected throughout the movie.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And this does kind of lead to like the love scene. And I do want to mention that I think it's very tastefully done. And I really appreciate that. Again, I think this is Celine's kind of commentary maybe on how women are viewed in sex scenes and just in movies in general. And I just appreciate how like tastefully it was done. And I thought it was a very beautiful, tender scene. And oh my God, the quote of, do all lovers feel like they're inventing something? That takes me out every single time. Like that is like such a good line. And I do feel like this script is just, it's incredible. And I love that Celine wrote this. And I feel like you can kind of see that throughout just her vulnerability through the script.
I very much agree with what you're saying about the way it's shot. Even just when, throw back to the start of the film, when she's drying off in front of the fire, the pose you see of Marianne is hunched. It's not gratuitous. There's nothing on show. It even looks like what you would see in a more Renaissance painting of the curvature of the female body. So I agree very much with tact with the shot is very sweet and not taking advantage. So I think it's well done.
So something that's like not a part of the love story that is still a very important part of the film is, I haven't talked about her yet, but another character that we have in the film, her name is Sophie. She's kind of the housemaid of the manor, and we find out that she is pregnant, and it's a pregnancy that she's not wanting. And so we do get this subplot with an abortion. And it's very heightened in like the political climate right now. But I think this is a very important subject to see in film. And I will say, I think kind of these scenes with Sophie getting the abortion, I think it's very confronting, but I do think the representation of it is important. And I think it ultimately is telling us just the strength of like sisterhood and like women. Like this is something that a lot of women go through and only can really understand what that might look like. So I found it very powerful. If I'm being critical, it feels a little disjointed with like the structure of it all, but I still very much think it's important and needed.
I've always been a little mixed feelings on it, and I think you really was able to finally sum up what I was feeling, is that it's the disjointedness. It's not the subject matter, it's not the topic or things like that, because I agree. I think it's so important to speak about this on film. And I think the way it's shot about women in a time period, like she doesn't even know she's pregnant. She just knows that she's missed her periods, because we just weren't educated on these types of things. So that's so important as well. Seeing all the different home remedies they try and do, like running on the beach or any sort of different things that we just didn't know at the time. And so I think it's really powerful, these scenes of these three women together and Heloise and Maren supporting Sophie, going to the herbalist, and then painting this is just so powerful. But it does take me out of the film a little bit at times, and I'm conflicting for myself, because on one hand I'm like, yes, this important, on the other hand I'm like, I'm not sure how it all fits in or things like that. So I'm not sure if it's taking away from the major plot, or if do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely get what you mean. And Celine Sciamma has even like spoke on this, that
really?
Like, yeah, that like, oh, sorry.
And the fact that we're not given these images or these books or this music actually has an impact in our lives, because it makes us more lonely. The fact that no abortion is represented makes it super dramatic it's an everyday thing. And the fact that it's not represented, the fact that there's no museum in the world, what is a canvas named like the abortion lady, actually has a lot of impact on the way we live, on our culture. So that's why we need those images. Yeah. That's why it feels right to actually put them there.
Celine has spoke on this part of the film, that like she does find filmmaking fairly political, and like I think Absolutely. This might be a little bit of propaganda, but it is propaganda I do support at the end of the day. I do think this is kind of Celine's political views maybe in the film, and maybe that's why it feels a little bit more shoehorned in, I guess. But again, I do think it's important to see on film. And
it's a viewpoint I've never expected to see on film, is the 17th century women and what it was like at a joint time to be pro-choice. Like, it's just not something I would have thought of. But of course women went through this all, and but it was always probably very hush-hush, and we don't speak yes. about that and all that sort of thing. So I really do give props for taking a choice like that. I think is strong point of view.
I think this film, we ultimately know that it's going to be a tragic ending. It's the time period. It's two women. Like, in your heart, you're like, you want it to work out, but you know it's not going to. And so kind of these final days of the sleepover, the girls' weekend coming to an end. One of the things that Eloise asks of Marianne is a photo of herself. And I find this scene very, very cutesy, and like also in my head, I'm very much thinking of Titanic, of like, that's very like what I was thinking in my head.
Jack, I want you to draw me like one of your French girls.
Find it very sweet. Like she like has, and I love the way it's shot too. It's like this tiny little mirror that she's like drawing herself in one of her books on page 28.
I like that you use the word cutesy, because that is very much what it is. And what I appreciate from the film is that it's not having to go so heavy in tone throughout all. It does build tension, let it go, build tension, let it go. And I think that's just real craftsmanship there. Is this in the book of the Orpheus and Eurydice? Because I've loved that subplot throughout, that they're reading it. And as a lover of Greek mythology, I think how brilliant, again, to incorporate this and the themes of losing a lover right at the end and having them slip through your fingers is just such smart script writing to go through. So I really enjoy this scene, and also just the women getting together and sharing information and enjoying the story and being critical about literature. I really enjoyed some of the quieter moments in the film as much as the more bold statements. So this scene and the book is just more set up for the payoff that we're going to get.
Yeah, there's a discussion about the Orpheus story earlier where like they kind of have a debate about the whole turning back scene, which again very much foreshadows to the end about like the lover's choice or the poetic choice. So throughout this whole kind of love story flashback that is the majority of the movie, we see this reoccurring image of Eloise in this white dress, and it's very much haunting Marianne. And we finally get to the end where we see the scene where she is in the white dress, and we see it as that final kind of moment, seeing each other face to face, and it's so like tragic of like Eloise saying turn around, and Marianne does make the choice of turning around and looking at her.
Coming from like loving classic horrors and things like that, it gave me very much that, or it gave me old school Gothic literature in the sense that seeing a woman in their big bridal gown, and it's always this yards and yards of lace and satin, like all those sorts of fabric, like they swallow her up. So it does look quite haunting, very even Haunted Mansion-esque, like Bury the Bride. It's interesting commentary on, is it Heloise herself getting married that's an issue? Is it marriage in general that is the nightmare? I find it all bundled up into one, and just an interesting and thought-provoking part of the film.
I kind of go back and forth on my interpretation of it. I definitely think there is like this wedding bridal kind of theme with the white, but I also kind of see it as like the blank canvas of like what's to come for Eloise a bit. Like she's never gonna see that. So I think that's what kind of haunts her, is like she doesn't get to paint her again. She doesn't get to see what is gonna come. So I that's kind of what I get from it. But yeah, it's very haunting, and I love the way that it's shot. It's gorgeous. So that leads us to kind of our final scene, which Kelli, this final scene, it's like a top final scene for me. Like, I know we talked about Sunset Boulevard many moons ago for our first episode. Like, that's a very iconic ending that I love, but this is just one that is just such a gut punch.
This movie, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, was the end of my movie watch through, but at the beginning in my first week of December, I watched The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And this is the modern day. This is the modern day Umbrellas of Cherbourg ending, for sure.
Yeah.
It is, as you sort of said, we know this romance isn't going to last, and that is just a life truth that some people come through your life and make it better, but things are required of oneself to take different life paths. But the way that it comes back to the art class, I love that telling story. I saw it 2 more times. What was in the portrait, and when you zoom in and you see that page 28, you just know that she was thinking of her the whole time, that the thought, it's telling you so much without, just in the shot, without having to explain it to your face, because then you know that it meant so much to Eloise, that she's thinking, okay, one day Marianne might see this, or okay, one day I have my beautiful daughter next to me, just like at the end of Cherbourg, like I have my beautiful family, but this was such an important part of my life and maybe like I'm grateful for that this person has come into my life, and if she sees this art one day, she's going to remember the time that we spent painting my first portrait. So I thought that was beautiful. And then the second time I saw her across the way. So again, playing into the social caste system almost, that Heloise is in this big grand private box, and Marianne has continued her life of being an artist and going after her passions and vocations. So they're not even anywhere close to each other. And sorry that I get to be the one to say it, but I get to be the one to say it.
Please.
We're sitting at the orchestra and this music is playing, and the genius of just letting us sit in it for such a long period of time. It's a long, long scene and long shot that we see Heloise start to listen to this music and cry. And the way this lady cries on screen, I'm so sorry, actress, but the way that you cry is beautiful. Thank you. Pop it up on screen. And the way it's shot and just the choices of the close-ups and just to see these, it's very real that it's not overproduced. It's not blubbering. It's the way it would be when tears just start to form and you're in public and you don't want to cry. And so you can start to like pull it up a bit and then it just goes.
Oh, yeah. It's so gorgeous the way that it's filmed. It's heartbreaking. And I think it very much is playing into the power of memory and song. Because again, it's playing the Four Seasons like they did earlier when Marianne had first shown her the song. I kind of interpret that this is the first time she's seeing an orchestra. We don't know that for sure, but I'm just going to pretend
I'm on the same
that's
page.
what's happening.
That's what I think. In my head, canon.
Yeah, exactly. And you could just tell she's getting so emotional because the memories are coming back to her. She's thinking of Marianne and just the what if and all of that. And it's just, the way that it stays so long, it's so emotional and it's very powerful. Yeah, just fantastic filmmaking here because it truly is one of the best endings. Even though it's tragic and heartbreaking, it really works well in regards to this story. I
want to pin and jump off something you said. What's sad is that there's not even the opportunity for what if because of the time period. So it's more that it's that could never. It's not a what if. It's that could never be, and that's sad.
No, that's a great clarification because that's very true. Because they couldn't be together during this time period. You know, we've come a long way in the world, and it's definitely way more accepted, which is beautiful. I love to see it. Thinking about that time period back then, just the oppression of just you couldn't really fully be yourself and maybe be with the people that you would want to be with. Some things I forgot to say in the episode. One, I own the Portrait of a Lady on Fire on Criterion, and it's incredible. Some great bonus features on here. Highly recommend purchasing it if you don't. And if you haven't seen the movie, you should just purchase it anyways because physical media is important. And then I'm a dork, and I got really inspired by this movie that I literally painted the titular Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This was my attempt at it. I'm not really an artist or a painter, but during the pandemic I got fairly inspired and decided to do that. So I wanted to bring the second movie that I saw of hers, which was Petite Maman, to you, Kelly, because I don't believe you had seen this before this episode. So I gave you some homework this episode.
On ne parlait jamais de quand vous étiez enfant. C'est pas forcément des choses qu'on cherche à cacher et secrets. C'est juste qu'on n'a personne à qui les dire. Je vous écoute.
How did you find kind of your first time watching Petite Maman, or translated as Little Mom, which is so cute?
There's not been times that we've spoken on the show and I've been like not overly excited for something. This was not for me, love. And a few very important reasons why. When you first gave it to me, I'm like, yep, love it. It's going to be cute. What I've read about it is like tender, and it was like 112 minutes, and I'm like, I am in. I made the grand mistake of watching this with headphones in. And there is no score to this movie. And I found recently that movies with no score, I really have a strong trouble connecting to. I didn't enjoy the birds. I really hated the birds. And this one was the same. And when I watched this movie with headphones in, within the first 6 minutes, they are eating food And as I'm not a sensory sort of issued person, but when you have headphones in and they're noise cancelling, so all you're hearing is people clinking and slurping, and so it sounds so superficial. I'm a bad movie critiquer, but it threw me, and that was just part of my experience of it, and I just knew it wasn't for me. In the same way that I spoke about on paper, Portrait of a Lady on Fire sounds very boring and could be dull, but ended up being gripping. I found that of Petite Maman. I found myself wanting to grab my phone and look at it, or just like look at the side of the screen and be like, oh, I haven't played that board game in a while. Like, I just found myself doing that a little bit. I couldn't engross myself. The themes I thought were great. I'm just going to sum up all my thoughts in one while I'm on a rant. I'm so sorry. This is
No, please go for it.
Don't think anyone else has gone on a rant about Petite Maman. Like, everything I've read, it's like 4.2 stars, and like, this is amazing and this is gorgeous. And I'm like, here's what's wrong with it.
Tell me, Kelly.
As the cultured and learned person I am, this movie gave me very much Heavenly Creatures, but I have not seen Heavenly Creatures. But I have seen I'm talking the Peter Jackson film, correctly? Yes.
I haven't seen it either, so okay. I don't know.
In season 20 of The Simpsons, they did a straight parody of
Of course, there's a Simpsons reference.
That's the cultured person I am today. Emily Blunt comes in and guest stars in this character of Juliet, and they do this parody of these two girls together, you know, writing themselves into this world. They do this weird bit about going to the folk art museum, and to the tune of Wipeout, they go, folk art, and it sticks in my head for some stupid reason. So when I'm watching this movie, that's what it's giving me. It's giving me the Simpsons episode of that one, which is critically panned and maligned and is not great. And then the other thing is that I'm so sorry.
No, please don't apologize. Keep going. It's totally fine.
When I'm watching this, like, I don't know how old these children are as the movie's going on, and I'm like, okay, by the tone and what they're saying, I'm like, maybe like 10, but they look really small. And then by the time I find out they're 8, 9, I'm like, I'm sorry, but since working with children, I'm like, no 8 or 9-year-old speaks like that. I don't care if like it's part of the French culture to be more developed and to be able to speak like that. But I found it very off-putting the way they're going on about being an inspector and stuff. Like, it was just a huge no from me. It didn't grasp me from the start. And so I think that is just sometimes what happens with film is if it does not grasp you and you can't get into the world, your brain wanders and it fills in all those different moments, and you take different beats, and like, because I'm not being sucked into what's happening, I'm like, well, that's not what's happening, and like, oh, that reminds me of that. I wasn't able to be in the world, which sucks because I like what it is saying. It just didn't speak to me, which is so silly because a lot of the things and what is actually happening in the film mirrors a little bit of what's been happening in our lives with grief and loss. So maybe in that sense as well, maybe I'm detached myself from it to protect myself, possibility of that. I just found it an interesting viewing experience. Melissa, what did you think?
No, I very much appreciate you sharing your opinion, and I'm sorry that you didn't like it. And that's the thing. I think this might be the first time where we really don't agree on a movie.
It's true.
Because usually we're very much, you know, in line with each other's opinions. But no, I love this movie. I think it's very simple in its narrative, but it's also layered at the same time, like emotionally. Like I get a lot from it. I love the runtime. I love how short this movie is. It's fantastic, because I will say, just kind of off comment, but like, just the movies today are so bloated and so long for no reason. And I love how short and sweet this movie is. Nellie, our lead character, her grandmother has recently died, and they're going back to her mother's childhood home to kind of clean up, you know, her belongings and things like that, and kind of do all the final arrangements type of thing. Nellie explores in the woods and finds this version of her mom at the same age as her. I think it's a really interesting concept, because I think you can interpret it a few different ways. I think you can interpret it as like it's really happening, like a Back to the Future kind of thing, like little mom and daughter meet up. Or you could interpret it as like, this is Nellie's way of like maybe interpreting her grief. Maybe it's an imaginary friend. I don't know. You can probably interpret it even other ways as well. But I find the movie very beautiful. It does have one song, but yeah, mostly no score. I love the naturalistic filming of it. It's very like minimalistic.
Yeah.
But I love the nature sounds. I think it really adds to this like nostalgic kind of feeling. And for this episode, I selfishly was like, okay, it's my time to watch all the CELINE SCIAMMA movies. So I did watch all of her work in regards to what she's directed, which is really cool to see. And what I found is she's really good at capturing this like summer feeling with a lot of her movies. And this is the only movie that like captures a very autumn feeling. Like this is a very autumnal mood and feeling. Like I think this is a great movie to watch like September, October, like November timeframe on a Sunday afternoon.
That was my mistake, maybe.
yeah. Maybe this was not the right time to watch it, not right time of year. But no, I found the movie very beautiful and with like its themes with grief and accepting your parents, because I think. And just also like accepting yourself as a mother as well. I'm not a mother, but like that's like the feeling I get from the movie. But yeah, I'm sorry you didn't like it.
Yeah, and I so feel so bad. I went on this huge rant. You're like, by the way, this is what it's about. I'm like, I've just gone. No, at the end of the day, I still think like I'm not going to rate it low. Like I would still rate it as a well-crafted, well-done movie. I'm really happy it's done well, like critically, and that you get a lot about it, and I can see people getting out of it, but it wasn't the one for me and at this time. So it's not in the sense like I think this is a bad film, not at all. I would still say like, yep, give it a go, especially if you do like Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And I'm glad I have tried it and watched it. And that's the thing, you can only just give things a go and have an open mind going in. But if it just wasn't for you, just wasn't for you.
Yeah, so I won't torture you any longer. We'll transition to our kind of final thoughts of Celine, but we'll say au revoir to Petite Maman.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Now seeing two of her movies, is it somebody that you might want to explore more of her work? What's kind of your general synopsis and feelings of it all?
Now that I'm familiar with the name, it's definitely one like if you hear, oh, the new CELINE SCIAMMA, I would really be keen to see what the next synopsis is going to be and where she's going to go and what she's going to do, because I think both movies, having one period piece and having something more smaller and familiar based and almost slice of life-ish, living in the now sort of moments, those are two wide ranges, so I'd be interested to see what she's going to do next. I think the use, specifically for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, the use of light and the costumes are beautiful. To have Marianne in these darker tones with her juxtaposed with the dark hair, very stoic face, with Heloise with these lush, rich gowns and her beautiful blonde hair. Like, I think just having an eye for that sort of thing is so transfixing. So I'm definitely keen to see what else she brings. And I don't know if it's a strong choice, but I love the fact that you see slight dark circles under the eyes of both leading ladies, because as someone who has perpetual dark eyes, like I noticed that and I'm like, thank you for not just covering that up, like just for showing women. That's what I mean, just for showing women as they are and in their beauty. I would definitely want to see more of what she's going to do.
So I don't know if you liked the costumes in Petite Maman, but actually Celine was the costume designer for that movie, which I think is really, really cool. She wrote it, she directed, and did the costume design. It's like, okay, what else can she not do? Like, just seems like she can do a little bit of everything. I do want to shout out Kelli Mehan. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but she did the cinematography for both of these movies, and I just
beautiful.
Again, the female gaze from the female, it's beautiful. I love that.
With painting, I wanted to show the artist really at work, so that it would be no editing in the painting scenes that you will see, that it will be the right rhythm, the true rhythm of the painter.
And you decided to make Hélène Delmer be the hands of Noémie Merlan's character as she's painting.
Yes, and she was painting on set, so she would come and she would paint, and Noémie would look at her, and then we would do the reverse shot on Noémie, who had been observing her doing this. The weird thing is that mostly what she was looking at, Noémie wasn't really looking at the gesture that she was doing. She was looking at the whole body language and mostly her gaze.
And yeah, I think the sound design in both movies are fantastic. I know the lack of score you didn't quite like in Petite Maman, but I really love those like naturalistic sounds in both movies. You really get that. You hear the crashing of the waves. I feel like in both movies there is these kind of like silent moments, and I like those kind of quieter moments in both of the films. I think it really adds to it. And now seeing all of her work, that's definitely a reoccurring theme that I've noticed is she's okay with the silence, which is sometimes it might make you feel a little uncomfortable, but I kind of like it. I do find her as an incredible voice in film right now, because it's basically these two and then three others, and the three other films, Water Lilies, Tomboy, and Girlhood, she actually calls it her coming of age trilogy. And they're not like actually all connected, but very much with the theme of like coming of age is very much present. And yeah, I like her. She has like this minimalistic approach to her films, but like it also feels very universal with a lot of the themes that she's going for. And there's a very much a timeless quality, I feel like, with all of her films. Portrait of the Lady on Fire is the only one that's like very much set in a time period, but all the other ones, it's like you don't really know what time it is, but it could be this year or it could be like 10 years ago or even longer. Like I really like that about her filmmaking, and she's written all of her movies too. And I think that's just really badass.
That's going to wrap up most of our month of female filmmakers. We've had our montage, which you haven't seen it yet. Please check it out. It's my favorite one Melissa's done so far. There'll just be so many names and faces and things that you didn't know women have achieved and were achieving, and some really inspiring quotes. My mum watched it. She's like, Kelly, that was great. Like, I watched it afterwards and was like, yeah, I can do anything. Like, yeah. Another big thank you to all the lovely ladies who joined us for our International Women's Day panel. That is always just one of the biggest joys that we get to host that and to just catch up and talk about some of the different women and characters that have just touched our lives. And it always gives me something to think about. It always gives me something to walk away from and feel like I've had a bit of growth and just something new to go find out. So I love that. We've talked about A League of Their Own. So again, talking women in sports and directed by Penny Marshall. It's been a good time. We've had CELINE SCIAMMA today, but next week, make sure you join us for our lives. We're going to be talking about women behind the camera still, and just again expounding on some of those people that maybe you're just not as familiar with the names, because I feel like when we talk female directors, you've got a couple big names that definitely stand out, but then there's other women out there that maybe we just don't know of as much or are still paving the way. And I think that's been a big theme. Sorry, I'm excited. I've got a good point. A big theme of what we've done this month is the future voices. We've talked a lot about current movies, current women directors, and that just makes me so excited. So tune in for our lives. We are on the last Friday nights of the month. So keep a lookout for us then. Melissa, where can people find us?
Yeah, you can find us all over the internet. You can find us on X, on Instagram, which I'd probably most active on Instagram, so follow us there. Also, join our Discord, still trying to build our community there. We'd love to talk with y'all and get your feedback and have that conversation after the episodes. We're also on Letterboxd and on TikTok. If you are new here and you haven't subscribed, please do. That very much helps us out, and make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. And of course, as always, stay magical, everyone.